And for more on all of this, we're joined now by pollster and communication strategist Frank Luntz. Frank, the latest CNN poll of polls is showing a close general election, no clear leader between Harris and Trump. Do you think that this newly complete Democratic ticket is going to reveal something new here?
Yes, it does, because the momentum is clearly behind the Vice President Harris. You see it in the crowds, you see it in the commentary, you get a feel for it across the country. I'm doing focus groups every, 4 or 5 days, and I see it in the sessions that we've been doing, that it's remarkable that in 2 weeks' time, the entire race has shifted. And I remind viewers that it's not the national numbers that really matter. It's only those 7 key swing states in the West, Nevada and Arizona, in the South, North Carolina and Georgia, and in the industrial Midwest, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. Those are the only states that matter. And in every one of those states, Harris has either closed the gap, ended the gap, or in some of those states, the Midwestern states, Harris even has a 1 or 2% lead. You can see it, you can feel it. It doesn't mean that this election is over. There's still more than 90 days to go. And most importantly, Donald Trump still has a lead over Biden and Harris in terms of his performance in his administration versus their performance. Trump needs to come out, talk about issues, clearly, most importantly, inflation, immigration. But the more that he stays back, the more that he's not part of the message, part of the daily discussions, and the more that Harris takes the limelight, such as the town hall that you're about to show, the rally you're about to show, the stronger she's going to continue to get.
Frank, if you can give us a sense, because you are doing these focus groups in these key places, can you give us a sense of some of the moments or some of the comments that are standing out to you that you're hearing from people?
Yes, that she's different. They're excited about her, that she offers a break from a 77-year-old and an 80-year-old. That's number one. Number two is the fact that they thought that Joe Biden was too old, and they had an issue about voting for him. And the key, because I'm talking to people who have switched, who are not voting for Biden, but are voting for her, younger women, younger African Americans in particular, women in general, see in her the same kind of excitement that they saw in Barack Obama in 2008. That story led this broadcast, and it is true in focus groups as well. There is an energy and excitement that had not existed in the Democratic campaign that Donald Trump had among Republican voters at the time of the assassination attempt and during the convention. But the focus has changed, and I want to remind you that this is before the convention. She's going to have another bounce when she gets 4 days of unchallenged coverage. So you could see her having a 3 or 4% lead coming out of the Democratic convention, and that's significant.
It's really interesting. So let's look at some of the progressive policies that Walz has championed, and maybe you can also speak to how much you think he's just going to matter in general. A poll taken by the Washington Post in 2022 found a majority of people support law prohibiting discrimination against trans people. So how do you think that will come into play with the Walz pick, specifically in places where it matters?
If he starts talking about that, and the Trump-Vance campaign is talking about inflation, and it's really affordability, and they're talking about immigration, and it's really a sense of safety and security, that beats transgender. Only 1% of Americans prioritize transgender issues. 30% prioritize inflation, 28% prioritize immigration. So if her campaign gets off the rails, focusing on issues that most Americans simply don't care about, that would be a mistake on their part. And it's funny you raise this, because it's exactly precisely what this election will be about. If Trump focuses on those issues and stops getting drawn into the negativity that he seems so easily aligned with, then it's his election to lose. In Harris's case, she wants to draw a clear and precise contrast, her attributes versus Trump's attributes. In that situation, she's the stronger candidate.
Vance, we've heard J.D. Vance talking a lot about family values, the importance of families, of having children, and that is a sign that you're invested in the future of the country. On the flip side, in his state, Walz expanded paid family leave, and benefits like lunches, school lunches for kids. A political poll from 2022 found a majority of Americans think the type of legislation about paid family leave, for instance, makes a difference in helping families grow. How do you think this is going to impact how voters perceive these candidates, depending on how the campaigns use this policy line?
Once again, you've hit the nail on the head. If it's described as pro-family, helping families make ends meet, we have 24% of Americans who are paycheck to paycheck voters where their families struggle at the end of a week or end of a month to pay their bills. If this is about making their day-to-day lives easier, that's a policy that will be endorsed by everyone. If it becomes policies that are only focused on certain families in certain communities, and if it's spoken out of anger or resentment, that policy will fail. The issue with Vance is that they're dredging up something he said that he probably should not have said in 2021 about women who don't have children. Don't be insulting. Don't be mean. And in fact, if I only had 3 words to the Trump-Vance campaign, don't be mean. And if I had 3 words to the Harris-Walz campaign, I would say talk about issues.
I love that. I love your words of advice. Frank Luntz, thank you so much.